Good evening. This is Political Forum for Wednesday, April 8th, 2015. I'm Dartesia Pitts, a board member here at CAN TV. Today we're talking about yesterday's election with our guest, political analyst and journalist, Monroe Anderson. Thank you, Monroe, for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Monroe, as I indicated, is a political commentator and an award-winning veteran Chicago journalist. Thank you for appearing again on Political Forum today.
I'm also a Chicago Defender columnist. This is pretty new, but yeah, since January.
Chicago's own.
Yes.
This is a live, interactive program brought to you by the community service here at CAN TV. I encourage and implore you to get on the phone, join in the conversation, and give us a call at 312-738-1060. We're talking politics in Chicago. What better time to call than now? All right.
And I think we're here because we had a little election.
Yes.
Yesterday, right?
Yes, absolutely. We're here to talk about yesterday's elections. So before we go into that very that hot topic, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Got an hour. I moved here in '72 to work for Ebony magazine as an assistant editor. I then went to the Chicago Tribune, where I worked for 10 years, and I was a political columnist there and an investigative reporter, among many other things. Then I went to Newsweek, and I worked there. I worked on this book called Brothers about Robert Taylor Holmes. We did about Robert Taylor Holmes. And then I was Mayor Sawyer's press secretary. I did that until we were beaten by Mayor Daley. And then I went to WBBM TV, where I was in management and host of a TV talk show called Common Ground. And in 2002, I retired. And I came out of retirement a couple of years later to be editor of Indigo. And when Hermine Hartman bought Savoy magazine, I became editor of that. When she ran out of money, I went and wrote a column for the Sun-Times, and now I'm writing for the Defender.
So
is that enough?
Absolutely. That means you have covered all fronts, from Tribune to Sun-Times to Indigo, and everything in between.
Yes.
So I'm very appreciative that you came tonight, and I'm happy that I'm able to interview you. So this is awesome.
I love young talent. I mean, you're the next generation. So,
well, this is the political elections, the mayoral election and aldermanic elections that we had last night. Hot topic.
Yes.
Front page, of course.
Right. National news because of Rom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what is your opinion? The fact that we had a runoff election for a mayor. What do you think about that?
Okay. Black Chicago elected Rahm Emanuel 4 years ago because of President Obama. He was President Obama's guy. And there was the false belief that because he had to hook up with the president, that he'd be able to do all these wonderful and marvelous things for us. He wasn't quite able to do that because President Obama is reluctant to appear as if he's playing favorites. I mean, the first black president really hasn't done that much for black America. I mean, it's not that he's hurt us in any way, but he hasn't bent over backwards to do us any favors. Same thing with the city of Chicago. So, 4 years later, we find out that the guy who's in the office is basically a corporationalist. And he's pals with the big boys with the big money, but really is not caring about the community. Therefore, he shuts down 50 schools, mainly in black and brown communities. That was important because in a lot of communities, the school is its identity. You can't say, well, unlike New York where you can say, well, I'm from 145th Street or something. In Chicago, it's a lot of times it's, well, I'm Doolittle or something like that. Plus, if you graduated from a school, you like to, that's sort of your community and association. And so you like, you know, for example, I graduated from Gary Roosevelt. We have this whole association. Anyway, so he takes that out, and so he upsets black people.
So I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay, sure.
So you talked about the schools, and you talked about Mayor Emanuel being a corporationalist. And for those of you who are watching, you know, he has a favoritism to corporations.
Right.
One of his, items on his agenda, one of the things he was running for on his platform is being able to bring big business and, to Chicago and making Chicago an international, continue to be an internationally recognized city.
Yes.
Do you, what is your opinion as to his ability?
He has been successful at that to some extent. So what happened over the past 4 years is that people in the loop, they got jobs, they got the mayor's attention. Once you got outside of the loop, you didn't get much, which is why people were upset with him. But no, he's brought in some major corporations. He's made Chicago a more international city. This has been his strategy. But just outside the loop, there's a place called Chicago. And he forgot about that place completely. And that's where the voters are.
Okay. We're going to hold this for 1 second so we can take the caller. Hi, caller.
Hi, yeah, I've been reading a lot of write-ups that say that even though Mayor Emanuel won the election, it was sort of a victory for progressives because it was such a challenge for him. I mean, how will we know if that's actually the case when things start moving forward?
Yeah, that is the case. But these things, there's no magic wand. You don't go from a corporationalist, conservative administration to a progressive one just like that. What's happened is 10 of Mayor Emanuel's aldermen, rubber stamp aldermen, lost in the runoffs. And they've been replaced, many with Hispanics who were with Chewy. So Rahm is going to have a more contentious city council to begin with. Now, we don't know how long that's going to last, but I suspect that if you look at what happened in New York, what kind of happened here, there is a progressive movement breaking out in the Democratic Party, long overdue. But people are tired of more of the same, especially when it seems that the right-wingers are winning too much and we're not winning enough nationally.
Okay. So going back to President Obama and Mayor Emanuel, it seems that the community sometimes, through their vote, may seem to be like they just don't know, right? Based on who they vote for and then the criticism that comes while the person is in office. Both President Obama and Mayor Emanuel came in their predecessors. You had you had Daley for Emanuel, so he came in
my
behind
theory,
the dynasty.
Right, exactly. No, my theory with Mayor Daley was that whoever followed him would be a one-termer because he had screwed the city up so badly, especially with the parking meter deal. And and the financial debts we're in, that nobody could overcome it.
So that gets kind of to my point as it relates to schools.
Right, exactly.
The next mayor, just like President Obama, the next president after President Bush, they were going to have to make some hard decisions.
Yes.
So I've heard that there's a lot of controversy around the school closings, as we know.
Right.
From my understanding, the school closing list existed for years prior to Mayor Emanuel. So when he got into office, he, worked with the powers that be and made the very hard decision to close these schools.
There have been many, there are all sorts of plans out there. Okay. For example, when I was covering Mayor Harold Washington, Bill Ware, his chief of staff, told me that Chicago is the only city in the world that has poor people on its most valuable property, the lakefront. Okay, and there you had Cabrini Green and Robert Taylor homes on this very extensively expensive property. And a black mayor couldn't do anything about it. As soon as Daley got in, he had a plan, and neither one of them exists anymore for all practical purposes.
So we have a caller.
Hi, thanks for doing this debrief. I actually have a question for you about the media and election. And while I understand that incumbents a lot of times get more play because they're just out and about so much,
Right.
I was kind of stunned to see the front cover of the Sun-Times when it endorsed Mayor Emanuel with a full-page picture of the mayor in front of an American flag and a big endorsement right there on the cover page, when I'm used to seeing endorsements on an editorial page handled far more professionally than I felt that was.
Right.
So I just wanted to ask for your comments on that, because that seemed like turning a page in media's role in an election.
Pardon me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What happened during this election is that the powers that be in the city of Chicago decided that Mayor Emanuel is their guy, and that he can save them. You know, the Sun-Times is in trouble. It could fold any day now. The Tribune is in better shape, but not dramatically better. So the entire power structure has come to embrace Mayor Emanuel. Commissioner Garcia is an outsider, and so they had no use for him at this point in time. In fact, very seldom do the powerful and positioned have much use for somebody who wants to change things.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
I have a question for your guest. It seems to me that publicly people voice discontent with the state of affairs, but I think people are secretly comfortable with the status quo because they keep voting for the same people over and over again.
Well, you know, they don't always vote for the same people again, but in this situation, this specific mayor's election, you had one guy with, depending on whose report you read, somewhere between $15 and $30 million in his campaign war chest, and another guy, or other guys with, well, Willie Wilson had a couple of million or something, and Garcia ended up having $6 million. But Mayor Emanuel had all this money, and he bought all these TV ads that defined Garcia and went over and over and over. And the ads bred fear in the Chicago voters. You had people, Republicans and Democrats, saying that Chicago was going to turn into Detroit if Emanuel didn't stay around, which is ridiculous. You know, Detroit is a one-horse town. Chicago has all sorts of corporations and levels of revenue coming in, so it's not going to fall in the lake. When Harold Washington, they did the same thing when Harold Washington was running for mayor. They said Chicago was going to turn into Gary, Indiana, back then. You know, it's interesting how they always find these failed black cities to become the reference point for what's going to happen to Chicago if some white man doesn't stay in power.
And how they sell fear to us.
Yes, exactly.
Be afraid.
Exactly. So, you know, I've talked to people during this election, and their arguments were the attack ad and Mayor Emanuel's talking points. They've been so convinced that this is how it's going to work. That Commissioner Garcia was not prepared to take over the city, which is nonsense. He's been an alderman, he's been a state senator, and he's been a Cook County commissioner. He knows the same pool of politicians as does Mayor Emanuel. And mayors don't run cities. The people they put around them, surround themselves with and hire, make the decisions.
Okay, you've referenced several times the Harold Washington legacy.
Yes.
And we hear that, we've heard it so much, especially with some of the, candidates, or some of the candidates running on his name, even almost 30 years later.
Right.
When we are referencing this legacy to young Chicagoans, what exactly is the reference point? What exactly is the Harold Washington that a substantial number of the African American community holds so near and dear?
Well, Harold was this incredibly charismatic character. He was incredibly articulate. I mean, he could speak street, and he could speak in. He had command of words that would send reporters racing to their dictionaries to find out what the word meant, what was the definition. He was very eloquent, but down at the same time when he talked. He transformed the city. Before then, it was just the daily machine, and everybody else was sort of had little token positions here and there, but weren't part of the players. He brought in all these African Americans and Hispanics, people who had never had a chance before. He named this. There was the fire chief was Italian, and the guy says that he never thought that a black mayor would name him chief of fire, the fire chief, and it was the first time an Italian had ever been a fire chief. Mm-hmm. So Harold would talk about being fairer than fair, mm-hmm. and he was that. And what it did was, after he died, every mayor, well, Daley and now Rahm, has to have some diversity in their cabinet, mm-hmm. and among their department heads. Now, neither of them have been as diverse as Harold was, but nobody can go back to the old days, mm-hmm. when it was mainly just white people, and a token black here or a token Hispanic there, and that was it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also mentioned earlier that the black vote put Mayor Emanuel in office for a second time.
Yes.
Where do you believe black Chicagoans are going as a voting bloc as we move into the future?
I don't know, and they don't either. No, this is the problem, mm-hmm. is that after Harold Washington died, and there was a split between Eugene Sawyer and Tim Evans, the two camps, the block split. And just for the record, I was Mayor Sawyer's press secretary. Sure. And I became Mayor Sawyer's press secretary. I was working at Newsweek magazine at the time. Mm-hmm. And when I was asked to do this, I had no ambitions of going into politics. But what I thought about it, and I said, well, I can sit on the sidelines and watch it all implode, or I can get in there and try and make a difference. Mm-hmm. So I got in there and I tried to make a difference, but I didn't. Okay. But anyway, since then, we have never had our stuff together enough to come back as a truly powerful force. We had power, we gave it away, and we may never ever get it back.
You mentioned something about getting involved and making a difference, and this is something that I always encourage my colleagues and my contemporaries to stay involved. I actually had a couple that I knew who made the decision not to vote in this election because they didn't like either of the candidates. Yeah. Or after we get somebody elected into office, they don't stay involved with the community. They just kind of allow things to happen to them.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And with politics, either you're a player or you get played on. And so if you are not in there mixing it up, making your interests known, then other people will come in and impose their interests on you. And that's been a problem. Mayor Daley and now Mayor Emanuel buy off key power brokers in the black community, and everybody else sits back, and then we wonder why we're happy when Mayor Emanuel gives a black preacher 500 city jobs, summer jobs for black youth, which is nothing. I mean, if we had the power, we could be giving away a lot more than a few begging for city summer jobs or something like that.
Okay. We have a caller. Hi, caller.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my question is, I want to ask your guest, can he speak to, supposedly the president said he was not going to say where the library was going to be until after the election. I wanted to know your feelings on that, and how would, if he had said where the library was going to be before the election, how would that have actually changed how the vote came out? Because from my observation, I don't think the numbers was all that different.
You know, I've been trying to figure out why he didn't say, you know, one report, of course, says it's because the library is going to New York City, to Columbia. And that could be true, I mean, because it seems to be persistent. But then he has said that, no, he wants it in Chicago. So I don't know what game is being played with this. One report had him saying he's waiting on Chicago to get his stuff together before he made the commitment. And that makes a little sense because we don't have it together yet as a city. You know, we have all this fighting going on. So I don't know what's going on. But actually, as far as I'm concerned, the ideal location would have been the old Michael Reese Hospital site, because you could have had the library there. It's vacant land, and not only would you have had the library, but you could see the lake from there, which is what Chicago is really all about. I mean, that's Chicago's unique feature. And you know, if you put it in Washington Park, then it's a regentrification program where it's going to upgrade the area, and a bunch of white folks are going to replace a bunch of black folks.
And extension of University of Chicago.
Yes, so exactly.
We have another caller. Hi, caller.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, so with the election now over, how long do you think Monroe will be Rahm's honeymoon? Because there's a lot of tough decisions ahead, you know, and how long before media and before voters, the Chicagoans, will want some answers?
Yeah, that's a good question. It won't be long. You know, I mean, well, for one thing, we have to see how long the new improved Rahm Emanuel lasts. You know, he's no more Mr. Nasty Guy. You know, he's going to be nice now. He's going to listen, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that he got all this support because the power structure, media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, business people, et cetera, weren't comfortable with somebody from the outside. Okay, but now the real problems are still going to be there. He's going to be making the hard decisions, as he says, and the hard decisions are really hard. I mean, first of all, we can expect a property tax increase, and nobody's going to be happy about that.
I always think that it's very unique. Chicago's such a unique place that when we talk about elections, we have to sit and talk and assess and analyze the black vote, the white vote, the Hispanic vote, right, just because of the, you know, the way the city is set up.
Yeah, because it's so segregated. I mean, it's the black community. I mean, we know where these communities are.
Right.
Now, the Hispanics are a little more integrated than we are, but not dramatically. I mean, Pilsen is, and Humboldt Park is basically Hispanic. You know, and right now we're the population is basically a third, with Hispanic, black, and white.
Yeah. Before, I know we are running out of time, but I want to just mention these brief statistics. Got it from the Coalition of African American Leadership, and I got it from Kelly Fair's Facebook page, Polished Pebbles. Wanted to give a shout out to that nonprofit organization. But Chicago has the highest black unemployment rate among the nation's 5 most populous cities. The unemployment rate for black young men in Chicago is north of 50%. The black poverty rate in Illinois is 31.6%, with over 40%, with that number being 40% in North Lawndale alone. And the black percentage of city contracts awarded at this point is about 7%. So
yeah, and I hit on that in my column this week in the Chicago Defender, so you can go online and check it out, or if you Google Monroe Anderson, you'll see it there.
All right, thank you, Monroe, for coming and engaging in this conversation. It's definitely one that we need to continue beyond CAN TV. What do you think?
Invite me and I'll be back.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for tuning in. Thank all the viewers for the calls. Thank our telephone technician, Sylvia. And Political Forum, as you know, has been brought to you as a community service by CAN TV. Please join us again for our next Political Forum, same time next Wednesday. Have a great night.